Okay, so our fourth question is related to the Affordable Care Act. And the question is, if you support the Affordable Care Act, then what areas do you think will be revised or tweaked in the future? And if you oppose it, then are you satisfied with the healthcare system as it previously existed, or are there reforms you would advocate for, and if so, what are they? And this is a 2-minute question, so a little more time on this one. And Congressman, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I oppose it. I've been adamantly opposed to it from when it was originally proposed. Now that we've seen what's in there, there's certainly a lot for the American public to oppose. I think it's, first of all, it starts off being unconstitutional, having a mandate on every individual. I think the courts are going to strike that down. And I think that this is going to be a major election issue on whether or not this president gets reelected. It's ration care. I don't want a board of bureaucrats defining what type of care I'm going to get, or my grandparents are going to get, or my kids are going to get. I believe that if my kids get sick, I ought to be able to take them to the doctor that I choose. And if I don't like the opinion of that doctor, I ought to be able to take them to a different doctor. And so I'm against the plan, but fundamentally I don't think that it works financially. They've already cut $500 billion out of Medicare. You don't have to like the Paul Ryan plan. You can come up with your own plan, but this plan has already cut $500 billion. As well, it's got a slush fund in there. A slush fund that the president has already cut once. We just took another chunk out of it again to pay for the extension of the financial aid for the Stafford loans. But having these slush funds, it's the same as GSA. They've just recently used the slush fund to spay and neuter animals in Tennessee. I mean, these slush funds are ridiculous. And when you've got a $15 trillion debt, when you've got people out of work, we need to make sure that we're using every dollar, in a critical way to get our country moving again.
Thank you.
Your question was complex on the issue of what will be changed. Well, if you get 27 more of me in the House and 7 more in the Senate, everything we need to get done will get done to change it. What I'd like to see changed is to replace the heart of it with a single-payer system like the one in Taiwan, which consumes 7% of the national of GDP. Here we're using up 17%. We've got people uncovered all over the place. As for there being a board of bureaucrats, we've got those in every insurance company, so that's a sham issue. My budget fully funds Medicare for everyone. That's the change I would like to see.
All right. Thank you. Jose.
The Affordable Care Act, there's problems with it. There's no doubt that it needs to be tweaked. But let me tell you the areas that I do like about the Affordable Care Act. And as a father of 5 kids, I love the idea that my kids are going to be covered up to age 26. I love the idea that pre-existing conditions are covered. And as a father of 3 girls, and my wife and my mother, 5 important women in my life, I love the idea that they're going to be treated equally when it comes to health care. And so those are the important elements that I think are strong in the Affordable Care Act. Does it need to be tweaked? Yes, it does. I mean, we need to figure out how we're going to make sure and pay for it. But when you talk about and the way we ought to do it again is the thing that I harp on again is the fact that we need to look at the root cause of why healthcare costs so much. We need to be able to do some type of reform in how healthcare is provided to America. But I think everybody deserves to have basic health care and be taken care of here in our country. I think it's as humans. We need to ensure that all of our citizens have access to health care. Well, I think it's the cost of how we were going to how it's implemented and how we're going to pay for it. I think we need to figure out to ensure that it's a manageable way of paying for it. And again, that goes back to looking at how it's being billed and how it's being implemented.
Was that your end?
That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chad, the question to you.
Thank you. Don't like the mandates on small business. I think the way it was done, on inaugural day for Mr. Obama, the Republicans planned to stop him. On the inaugural day of George Bush, the Democrats planned to stop him. It's always about that. And that's why we got this health care bill the way we got it. It could have been much simpler, much more focused on a few things that make it easier for folks to get health care. Because we're paying for it anyway. Folks go in the emergency room, don't have insurance, taxpayers are paying for it. I mean, I was at the emergency room a couple weeks ago when my little boy hurt his finger. It's a mess. We could, pre-existing coverage, that's got to be in there. That simple fix. So insurance can't dump you when you get sick or you lose your insurance, you lose your house and your fortune. That was one fix that it could have been done very easily instead of 2,500 pages of bureaucracy that overran small business. And you hear it everywhere I go. Small business very concerned about the mandate. Folks being, I've heard the congressman talk about this, good idea. Folks being allowed to buy out-of-state policies to do that. That helps the market. That helps people's access. Pulling together, people that live together. If you four folks room together, why shouldn't you be able to pool together and get your policy? We can make it easier without just over doing it to small business because they have enough in a bad economy. The government's already put a bad economy at their front door. We didn't need the burden. But like I said, you got two parties plotting against each other from day one. So you're going to get this.
Thank you. Troy.
So the Affordable Care Act was something I didn't know about last time, and I just didn't know the name of what it actually was. I always heard it called Obamacare, and so I actually did know what it was. From what I understand about it, it's kind of vague in a sense of from what I talk to the American people about it. It's vague in what it does, and I think it's probably going to be stricken down by the Supreme Court, and they had all that time to talk it over, and they still can't decide. I mean, it's a big piece of legislation, and I give Obama props for trying to get that thing passed and trying to fix our Medicare and our insurance situation, and this just shows how dire it really is, and we need to do something about it now. And I think there's a couple things we need to do that. We need to build more hospitals. We need to make it easier for doctors to get into medical school and get more doctors out there. We need to get more nurses and more medical people out there, because that's going to be the ultimate fix to this. And the only way to do that is to make insurances to be completely run by it's a business, so to stop the regulation on it and to allow people to buy their insurance if they need it, and the ones that don't have it, then maybe the government could do something to help them out. But I don't like the government giving out handouts to people, and so I'm going to say that the Affordable Care Act is too vague. It doesn't really address the problems. I mean, it helped me out when I was 26 last year. I was able to get insurance. I was able to get some tests done to figure out I was okay, and I'm good. And so for that I'm happy. And but yeah, I think we just need to build more hospitals and get more medical professionals out there.
Great, thank you. This next question is a 90-second question, and Mike, will start with you on this one. As Congress looks for ways to reduce federal expenditures, what areas of spending in the Farm Bill should be reduced?
Well, I keep hearing that ethanol consumes more energy than it produces. And if that is proven, we should cut that program. There should be limits. There should be limits on the amount of aid that we give to farmers for not producing crops subsidies. There should be a limit. If a farmer earns over a certain amount, that should be removed. Beyond that, I'm open for suggestions.
Thanks, sir. Jose.
Well, so the Ryan budget proposes $60 billion in cuts in farm subsidies over the next 10 years, and while I applaud the efforts of cutting spending, one of the things that I want to make sure though before we just go out and say let's cut aid to our farmers, because that's the backbone of our economy here. We have to support that industry. Is we got to make sure that our farmers are well protected out in the international markets. I mean, we talk about all this about free trade, that and all these agreements that are being signed, but free trade has to translate into fair trade. And when I see that there is free trade and fair trade, then I would say we need to do away with subsidies. But right now, what we need to do is we want to make sure that those subsidies are in place to help the farmers that need it and to help the family farmers. Where I think we ought to save is let's look at the corporate farms, the big, large farms that are out in the Midwest, and let's cut those subsidies, because those corporations can survive on their own whether they have subsidies or not. And so that's what we ought to be working towards.
Great. Thank you. Jen?
I have no specific cuts I would offer to California farmers. I think that, especially Central Valley farmers, I mean, we get the short end at every turn. So I'm not going to go out there and say we ought to cut help for California farmers. I certainly want us to be treated fairly and openly and have a place at the table. And if I was able to get on the Ag Committee, I would fight every day for the Central Valley and the agriculture. That's what we rely on. That is what we should be proud of. And when we can help them in a fair way that makes sense for the taxpayers, we should do that. Too often the Central Valley doesn't have a place at the table, and we need to. Ag is so important to the Central Valley, and you guys all know that. It's the economic engine. And where we can help it and encourage it and be supportive of it, we should. And as a congressman of this area, I will do that and make sure that they have a fair, not unfair, but fair place at the table. And when the folks in Wisconsin or other places around the state are trying to compete for those dollars or opportunities, the Central Valley needs to be there. And we're not there because we're there more as Republicans or Democrats. Well, it's almost like we need to start our own parties, the Central Valley Party, because that's what we have to be. We have to be united at the hip as Central Valley folks that are taking our voice and our message to Washington, D.C. or Sacramento.
Thank you, Mr. Crockett.
Troy?
So farming, the way I see it, it works that sometimes the government regulates it, sometimes it doesn't. I'm a biologist, and so I know, I went to school and studied biology, and so I know what it takes to grow things. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to grow things is water. I think water issues right now are huge and key to farmers. I talk to a lot of farmers in the area, and they're always worried about water. That's all they talk about, water, 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 water. And so we have to do something to fix that. And I think one way to do that would be to do some infrastructure improvements on the San Joaquin Delta, and that would improve water quality across the state. Right now there's too much seawater backing up into the Delta, and that's making it bad for farmers. Also, I've heard from a farmer that if you have old equipment, like an old tractor, then the government will pay you to destroy the engine in that tractor, and that doesn't seem fair for the smaller farmers that would have bought that old tractor. So that they're pretty much destroying that one so they can get some type of monetary compensation to buy a newer tractor. And so I think we need to stop things like that, and we need to make it more free for all farmers to try to make a profit, because that's what they're trying to do.
Thank you. Congressman?
We're going to have a number of cuts. The biggest area is going to be in the subsidies. We're going to cut subsidies that affect largely the Midwest farmers, all of the program crops. But those program crops drive up the cost here. And when you have huge subsidies for corn and for some of the feed, I mean, you've seen our poultry industry get to the point where it's almost shut out of business. It affects our dairy and livestock. So I think we're going to have some drastic cuts to subsidies. I expect to see it in this next farm bill. I'm hopeful that we can get something done this year, get a farm bill out, but it's obviously going to be highly political. I'd like to see it restructured much like the specialty crop language that we got in there 4 or 5 years ago now. Within the specialty crop piece of it, it deals with pest protection. It gives some various mitigation for farmers. I mean, we should be doing things on research to give ourselves an advantage over every other country, and making sure that the pests that come in across our borders don't completely devastate our industry, like the glassy-winged sharpshooter and some of the other pests that have shut down one or more segments of the industry. So I think big cuts, you're going to plan on having big cuts to subsidies.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to start this question with Jose. Demographic data shows that every year thousands of immigrants move to the northern San Joaquin Valley, including many who cross the border illegally and work on valley farms. What are your specific views about immigration, and what should be done about undocumented immigrants already living in the 10th Congressional District? And this is a 2-minute question.
Well, I've already gone on record saying that I support a comprehensive immigration reform. But I think what the issues in this valley are not those type of issues that are affecting us the most. The issues in this valley that are affecting us the most are jobs in this district. In this whole valley, we have almost twice the national average in terms of unemployment rate. I think we ought to be focused on addressing those issues, putting our focus, our efforts to try and create more jobs in this area. And again, one of the things we need to be doing is we need to be supporting our farmers. We need to be making sure that they are successful. We need to be able to create programs that give them market access to the international market so that they can market their products on the international market. We also need to diversify the economy in this area. One of the proposals I'm doing is working with Costa and McNerney and creating a three district area where we work with the federal government, the state government, and the local government to create an environment that's conducive for industry across 80 miles across in Silicon Valley to come over and set up shop. We talk about moving manufacturing out of the country. Let's move it back in and establish it here in this area. And let's work with the higher education systems here. UC Merced, let's work with Cal State Stanislaus, University of Pacific, make sure that pipeline of qualified workers, our citizens, will be able to apply for those jobs and work. And those are the things that I think we ought to be focusing on. It's jobs, jobs, and jobs. I can't emphasize it enough.
I got 2 minutes. Jose said comprehensive reform. That was his answer to the immigration problem. I don't really know what that means. What is it that? There are some things we need to be concerned with. The first thing is securing our border against terrorism and drugs and human smuggling. I think clearly that our northern and our southern border could use some military presence, some bases, that not only secures our borders, but it feeds those economies. We have sailors and soldiers all over the world, 130 different countries, that we have sailors and soldiers floating around, feeding economies, securing other countries. Well, it makes total sense for us to do that, to have a military presence on both our borders, not just the southern border, our northern border. Why do we need a base in Germany, Japan, England? We could have sailors and soldiers there. That's the first point. I think that goes to the securing the border. E-Verify, which has businesses check the status of undocumented folks, makes some sense. The only caveat I would say is we need to refund them, local business. If we're going to mandate that to them, we need to make sure they have some kind of tax credit or something for the cost of that. But that leads to guest worker programs, getting our records straight, finding out who's here legally and not legally. We have laws on the books that would allow us to enforce, to go ahead and have secure borders. We're not doing that. We hear comprehensive immigration reform. What does that mean? Well, we should be required to answer that. And folks that have been here and followed the rules for 10, 15 years ought to have a process or a route to stay. So we really need to deal with it, not just immigrants. Sorry.
Thank you. Troy.
So immigration reform is necessary. We have too many people that are here undocumented, and we need to fix that problem. Because what it is, it's a situation that it's not going to get any better if we don't do something about it. I like Mr. Condit's idea about putting more bases on the borders. I think we need to secure our borders. I like immigration reform. I like comprehensive immigration reform, and I think I have a few plans on how to get that done. We need to bring in the best and the brightest. We need to bring in the most productive. We need to bring in people who are going to help America out. I mean, these people are immigrating here. They're coming here illegally because they're looking for a better tomorrow. They're looking for a future that they can't have in their own country, and that's what America's all about. I mean, I'm here because of immigrants. I think even my last name, I make a joke. It seems like it was changed at Ellis Island. I mean, I probably had a Scottish relative, and he's like McCormick, and they're like, you get McCormick. That's what you get. And so, I'd like to see more things like that. More maybe like a base down near Tijuana or something that allows people that want to come in to go through like an Ellis Island type process. more efficient, better organized, and then also have, I'm sure there's a lot of, Chinese people that want to come here. I'm sure there's a lot of people from Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, and South America, and Africa, and all over the world that want to come here and make a better future for their families. And I think that's what we should be doing as Americans. I mean, as a kid, I always saw the Statue of Liberty, and I thought, that's so great. But our immigration policies don't follow what that message is. I want to make America better, and the way to do that is through fresh, new ideas through immigrants.
Okay. Thank you, Congressman.
We absolutely need comprehensive reform. This piecemeal approach is not going to serve our valley well. We have secured our borders. They're much stronger than they once were over the last several years. We've done a number of different things to increase border security. I do think that having the National Guard on the border is something that can be helpful. But overall, we have to have a comprehensive plan that deals with all aspects of immigration policy. Right now, you've got the president that is pushing ICE. Over 1 million illegal immigrants have been deported now, tearing up families, but at the same time, also affecting our jobs here in the Valley. ICE is coming in and targeting businesses in the peak of production season or in the peak of farming season, and it's unhealthy for a community. It's unhealthy for a family. So that's why I think we need to have comprehensive reform. There's an E-Verify push in both houses right now. My fear is if you push E-Verify without a guest worker program, again, you're just going to have another flawed system that has the potential to deport people without addressing our overall needs. So I'm going to continue to fight for a guest worker program that's meaningful here in the Valley.
Have we really had ICE doing raids at?
Absolutely. It's a huge problem. I get a lot of calls every week from companies that are either fearful of it or have been threatened, or ICE has actually come in and
So has it interfered with any crop harvesting and production in this valley?
primarily with the nurseries. They've started out with the nurseries first, but a number of dairies as well. But we're just getting into peak harvest season, so I would expect to. I get a lot of concerned farmers that continue to.
I'm just
This is
asking,
not their number one
concern
issue.
versus it really happening.
Both.
Thank
Be
you.
happy to put you in touch with a few.
Thanks. Mike.
I like some of the things I heard the congressman say, and I applaud his thinking on them. On the AFL-CIO's excellent questionnaire, they had a 5-point package to take care of all this nonsense. Parts of it are vague, but I like it enough, so that's what I believe in. First, an independent commission to assess and manage future flows of immigrant workers based on labor market shortages that are determined on the basis of actual need. Second, a secure and effective worker authorization mechanism. Third, rational operational control of the U.S. border. Fourth, adjustment of status for the current undocumented population. And fifth, improvement, but not expansion, of temporary worker visa programs limited to temporary and seasonal not permanent jobs. To that, I would like to add shortening the statutes of limitation on deportation and making those apply regardless of whether they are requested, and require that person facing deportation be furnished counsel, which is probably the Lawyers Full Employment Act. And third, pass the DREAM Act.
Thank you, sir.